Perhaps more importantly, Thousand Arms was an anime-inspired RPG released in America during a moment when anime was finally beginning to break into the mainstream. The game's writer, producer, and planner all had backgrounds in TV anime, and that influence runs through the entire experience. Of course, there's the aforementioned opening and ending vocal themes, written and performed by then up-and-coming pop singer Ayumi Hamasaki, who had released her debut single earlier that year. But structurally, the game also feels like it's been built as a 14-episode anime season, complete with chapter breaks that use those classic 90s anime titles. You know, the ones that are like, exciting but vague exclamation, episode spoiling detail. While Thousand Arms wasn't a hit in the States by any metric, its anime aesthetic did end up working in its favor. The game arrived at a time when anime's reputation in the West was beginning to shift from weird and foreign to exotic and stylish. I'll even admit, that was a big part of its appeal for me when I first discovered the game around 2004 or so. I was a teenager at the height of what can generously be called my anime phase, which lasted well into high school and then, perhaps regrettably, several years beyond it. Yes, I was one of those kids. I'm not really into anime anymore. I don't think I've gone out of my way to watch one that isn't Digimon since like 2014, but back in the day, Thousand Arms caught my attention at exactly the right time. Critics at the time were generally kind to Thousand Arms, though the game never received the same sort of accolades as its bigger RPG contemporaries. Reviews tended to highlight the game's charm, its witty sense of humor, and the novelty of its dating sim mechanics, with several pointing out that this was likely to be many Americans' first exposure to the genre. But even then, there was a clear understanding that this game was always going to occupy a very narrow niche. It basically requires that the player be interested in both RPGs and dating sims. And if they're not fond of either half of that equation, they're not likely to stick around very long. Unsurprisingly, this remains an obscure collector's item to this day, and the game has never received a single English port or re-release.